What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel. We're talking dynasty buys, and in particular, we're talking dynasty buys at the quarterback position. Who do we like in different types of tiers? So I'm looking at four guys in this video. It's kind of looking at like, hey, are you a contender? Are you rebuilding? Hey, who's a veteran that you kind of like? And that's like a tip right there on the thumbnail. Who's a second year player that we're kind of buying right now? We're looking at real dynasty trades and evaluation here on this channel. So first up, let's talk about Matthew Stafford. I think that when you're looking at in that tier of dynasty quarterbacks, veterans, right? So when we're looking at Matthew Stafford, you're talking Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones in there, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, all those guys, Baker Mayfield possibly. Who do we like in that tier, right? Deshaun is out there as well. To me, Stafford has a pretty good value right now. So he's not very expensive, right? When we're thinking of like quarterback rankings, and he's in the early 20s, but he can still be a very, very solid QB2/3 on a contending roster. Now, when you're looking at his dynasty value in Superflex, it's trending down kind of. It's kind of in the middle. But again, when you're looking at him overall, you got to understand he's 36 years old. He is older. You're probably looking at 1 year at a time, right? And you know, when you buy these guys, the reality is they're always, it's like the car leaving the market, especially the older quarterbacks, right? So the car's going off the lot. He's going to depreciate in value. But what you can get out of for him this year is what you're looking at, right? Now, when we're looking at trades that have happened for him and in terms of where he's getting valued, he's in the early 20s. For us, he's a little bit in the QB 25 range. But I do like these deals. So Matthew Stafford, Zay Flowers for the 106. So if you're a contender, you have the 106. So that's, you know, the Brock Bowers / Ndunze, maybe Jaden Daniels in that tier for the 106, where you get to add on Zay Flowers. Contender, if you need a quarterback in Superflex, let's say you lost a quarterback, let's say you're looking at that QB2/3 mark. I don't mind that. I like the 106 side. It really hinges on what you think of Zay, because if Zay can get in that value of like that wide receiver 12 to 18 range, this is a no-brainer because you get Stafford if you need that quarterback. But if you want to sell Stafford, you're looking at that 106 and you're like, hey, I can kind of re-roll the quarterback position. I like the Stafford side for a contender. Again, this is all context, league context, right? 12-team Superflex, tied in premium, but I do like that side. Next one, Matthew Stafford, Isaiah Pacheco for the 110. I'm more comfortable in this 110 to 201 mark that you're seeing in these other deals, right? Stafford for the 201, Isaiah Likely and tight end premium. I like these deals. I love Isaiah Pacheco as a definitely a buy at the running back position at an offseason. If you're a contender sitting at that 110 mark, I do think that I would rather kind of roll with Stafford and Pacheco, get that production, and you get that other asset, right? If I can get an asset paired with Stafford, that's kind of the deal that I like there. Matthew Stafford for 201, Isaiah Likely. Yeah, I mean, 201 to me is a throwaway. Isaiah Likely, I mean, not a throwaway, but I'm comfortable giving that up for Stafford. Isaiah Likely is someone that I like, right? I think that he is solid. But, you know, with Andrews there, I love that offense, but I do think they're going to add to their weapons as well. Running back room, all of that. Like, it's hard to trust Likely from a week-in basis, right? So if I can get Stafford, if I need that quarterback, I think that's appropriate value there. Now, my next year is Bryce Young, and his value keeps decreasing a little bit, right? Now, I think with his new head coach, Canales from the Bucs, his offensive coordinator, that's going to increase the price a little bit. I do like that. I like that he's going to be in a system that elevates himself. Now, for better or worse, they're tied together now, right? Dave Canales and Bryce Young. Like, those guys are there. But what he was able to do with Baker Mayfield in Tampa, kind of reinvent himself. Now, he had the pieces around it. So I keep hearing this narrative about how he did that with Baker. Well, he had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and also, you know, Rashad White. I do think that the Panthers are going to look to update those weapons. I think it might take a little bit longer than people want, but I still think Bryce is a fun buy at his current price, right? For a rebuilding team. Like, I think he's still worth that, right? So he's still in that QB7, 16 to 20 range. He's in that kind of that second tier above the Stafford tier, but really in that Levis, Goff, Fields, Tua, maybe type tier area. But if you can get Bryce for the 112, I don't mind, you know, contending. Let's say you're rebuilding or you're trying to get younger at the quarterback position. You're sitting there at the 112. Hey, I'll take that, right? Bryce, 105 and 205 for Jordan Love, right? If you can get the 105 and 205 added on for Jordan Love, I think I do that. I like Jordan Love, but I don't think he's a surefire dynasty asset as many out there think. I like him, but again, Jordan Love's getting valued very high. QB9 ahead of Lawrence, Murray, some of these other guys. If I can get the 105, 205 back for Bryce, I don't mind that deal. I don't mind flipping Love for that. Bryce Young, Garrett Wilson for Brock Purdy. Again, Brock Purdy, QB 12-ish, 13 in that range. If I can get a guy like Garrett Wilson back for that, if I'm looking at it like I'm a mid-tier, maybe rebuilding type team, absolutely. I love Brock Purdy as my QB2 in Dynasty. I think that's fine, right? So if you're a contender, I don't know if I make this move right away, if I can win it next year. But if I'm looking at a 2-year kind of retooling, I would take the Bryce and Garrett Wilson side pretty easily there. Now, next guy, Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to put Trevor Lawrence in my buy category here. 24 years old only. He's sitting there in that tier between like Murray and Love and Richardson and kind of that range. But I do think that there is a narrative out there that Trevor Lawrence wasn't very good this year. He threw for 4,000 yards and 21 touchdowns, and he still he had the interceptions. And I know fantasy points per game wasn't amazing, but down the stretch he was QB5, right? I think from week 11 to week 17. There is more value to be had in Lawrence. I don't think he's in that tier like 6-ish range, 5 that they talk about in Keep Trade Cut with that Love area. I think he's closer to Justin Herbert than people think. I think that he's in that, top 6, 7 area. I think he can get there. So I think there's a little value to be had, right? So he's QB 11, 12, and 10 throughout kind of the rankings out there. But look at some of these deals. Nico Collins and Trevor Lawrence for Bryce, DK, and the 112. Again, I just talked about Bryce being a buy, but if I can get Nico and Trevor Lawrence for Bryce, DK, and the 112, I think I have to do that. I think I have to tier up at all those positions, right? I think I'm tearing up with Nico. I think I'm tearing up with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence for Josh Downs, T. Higgins in the 204. It is really hard to acquire a top 12 dynasty quarterback in Superflex. If you can do that with Josh Downs, T. Higgins in the 204, I think you have to do that. I think that is a very, very good price for him. And then Trevor Lawrence for Chris Godwin and Jared Goff. I like Godwin and Goff. They're not Lawrence. They're not Lawrence's prospects. They're not Lawrence's value. I think that's why I believe Trevor Lawrence is that buy. I think they're going to add weapons this offseason. I think ETN will be better going into the season. I don't know what they're going to do with Ridley. I love Christian Kirk, but I do think they go out and try to get a wide receiver 1. I think they're going to be very aggressive, and I think this offense is going to take that next step. I think Evan Ingram being there, I think that they are going to be more aggressive in the offseason to build around him. Offensive line wasn't amazing either. I think they are going to utilize some tools there to kind of develop that offensive line. I think that they're going to be aggressive as well there. And they're not comfortable with where they finished last year. And I think Trevor Lawrence takes that next step. I think he's getting hated on by certain areas of the dynasty community, maybe for not his fault, right? And I think we're going to take the blame game. People are going to be like, oh, they never blame Lawrence. But I do think that they're going to be able to add some pieces around him where he's going to elevate his game. And I think based on market value, I mean, everything's micro markets here. But I do think that when you're looking at like the micro markets in your league, Lawrence might have a little value that you can kind of extract from it. I think there's deals like that you see for the Bryce DK side. I think I did see him go for the 103 straight up. And as much as I don't hate that deal, I think you can get more if you're sitting at the 103. Like you don't necessarily need to move off the 103 for Trevor Lawrence right now. But that is kind of where his value is for just a straight up pick right now. Now, my last guy that I want to talk about is Anthony Richardson. Now, here's what I'm talking about with buys. So we're talking about buying high on a player that only played 4 games last year, right? So again, buys are all relative. Everybody's a buy and sell, right? That's why I hate the content of buys and sells, but I try to give you guys context for this. I think Anthony Richardson is getting slept on a little bit because I do think his rushing upside is going to be there. So if you're in a league where you have a 4-point passing touchdowns and 6-point rushing touchdowns, Anthony Richardson should get valued higher than a lot of these guys that are over him, right? I think Joe Burrow is a player that you can really kind of target. If you have Joe Burrow, target Anthony Richardson with, right? Even, Jordan Love is sitting around the same value as him. I would undoubtedly want Anthony Richardson's ceiling more than Jordan Love in my leagues. I even saw some people out there saying they'd rather have Anthony Richardson plus than CJ Stroud because of that rushing upside. And I think that's right. I think that they're going to build around them. I mean, I've seen mocks where they're getting Bowers and Troy Franklin and these guys. I think that they're going to bring back Pittman. I think they're going to add to this offense. And I think that in another year, even though he only played 4 games, I think another year in the system, learning it, I think behind the scenes, watching Gardner Minshew, all of those things is going to really help out Anthony Richardson. And we look at what his value is going for right now. Like, I like this deal. Anthony Richardson, 205 and a 25 first for Joe Burrow. I think that's a fun deal. I actually have a deal out there right now. I don't know if it's got accepted yet. I sent it out this morning. I sent Joe Burrow and the 110 for Anthony Richardson in the 104. So I have my skin in the game here. I'm not just saying shit to say shit. I'm doing it in my leagues, and I believe in it. If you can pivot up and pivot a little bit down, from Burrow to Richardson, but add some type of asset back, I don't mind that. right? I think that is a very, very good play there. Anthony Richardson and Jalen Waddle for CJ Stroud and Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler is nothing to me. So you're looking at Anthony Richardson and Waddle for CJ Stroud, right? This is the deal that people are talking about, getting that plus asset. Now, you might not like Jalen Waddle. Like, you might be one of those guys that hates Jalen Waddle or just doesn't see the value there. But if you can get, like, let's say you get a Olave in there, right? Let's say you get one of those guys in that range, Puka, Garrett Wilson added. Like, see what you can maneuver there, especially with CJ Stroud's value. I think you have to kick the tires on a little bit. I think you do. And then Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs for Jordan Addison, Jordan Love, and a 24th third. Again, I don't mind tiering. I think it's tiering up for me with Anthony Richardson because I have him higher than Jordan Love. Get Addison. It really depends on what you think of Addison there. You get that pairing with Downs, kind of like, hey, you get to kind of stack those guys. I don't love this deal. I think it's very fair, but what is Addison going to be, right? He's my wide receiver 16 in Dynasty. You have Downs there who could take that next step. He looked good with Minshew. Maybe he takes that next step, with Anthony Richardson. You're definitely a ceiling play there, though. Like, you're going for it. But this would be determined that Anthony Richardson is going to be a top 5 guy, where Jordan Love's going to be in that QB 10 to 12 range forever. And that's kind of how you're looking at that deal. So those are my buys at the quarterback position. Guys that I'm looking at right now that I'm actually offering in leagues. I never talk on this thing without actually doing leagues. There are plenty of people out there that tell you to buy someone and they're not actually going to go try to do it. I 100% will try to do all of my advice in my leagues, because why else would you listen to me, right? So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know in the comments. I mean, I love the trolls. You tell me I'm stupid. Someone told me, hey, I didn't even watch the video all the way through and then try to give his opinion. I don't care about that. At least watch the ads for us. Give us that ad revenue, baby. That's what we're looking for. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time.